used by the proprietary software developers to demonize cooperation. Terms like piracy. What are they really saying when they call sharing piracy? They're trying to equate morally helping your neighbor with attacking a ship. And morally, nothing could be more false than that, because attacking ships is pretty bad. But helping your neighbor is correct. So when somebody asks me what I think of piracy, I say attacking ships is very bad. And when someone asks what I think of software piracy or music piracy, I say, from what I've read, pirates don't attack using computers or musical instruments. They use arms. Don't fall into the trap of repeating our enemy's propaganda. So that's the reason for freedom number 2, the freedom to help your neighbor, the freedom to redistribute exact copies when you wish. Essential on fundamental moral grounds. Freedom 0, the freedom to run the program as you wish, is essential for a totally different reason, so you can control your own computing. There are proprietary programs that restrict even the execution of authorized copies in their licenses. And this is obviously not having control of your computing. So freedom 0 is essential. For a long time, I thought it went without saying. So I talked about freedoms 1, 2, and 3. But then eventually I realized this does have to be mentioned. And it's so basic, I put it at the beginning of the list. But freedom 0 is not enough, because that means you're free to either do or not do whatever the code of the program is already set up to be able to do. Which means the developer is still imposing his decisions on you, not through a license, but instead through the code of the program. So in order to control your computing, you also need freedom 1, the freedom to study the source code and change it to make the program do what you wish. This way you decide instead of letting the developer impose his decisions on you. If you use a program without freedom 1, you can't even tell what it's really doing to you. You have no way to check. And it's quite common for these programs to have malicious features designed specifically to spy on users, restrict users, and even to attack users. For instance, programs to restrict users are known as digital restrictions management, or DRM. It's quite common. And in fact, it's so widespread, so many companies do it, that we have launched a campaign of protests against DRM. You can find it in the site defectivebydesign.org. Go to that site and sign up. You'll be notified of our protest actions and you can participate. We need to make these protests big, because the mission is to show megacorporations that if they design their products to attack our freedom, they will be hated, and eventually they'll regret it. Now, I also mentioned features designed to spy on users and features designed to attack users, that is, backdoors. One proprietary program you may have heard of that has all 3 kinds of malicious feature is called Microsoft Windows. We know of specific features to spy on and report on users. It has many features for digital restrictions management, and it has a completely gaping wide open backdoor that allows Microsoft to forcibly change the software in any way at any time. The user has no control. In effect, if you're foolish enough to run Windows, Microsoft owns your computer. It's well known that the security of Windows is not very good. But that's actually just one aspect of security. That is security against third parties. But when it comes to security against Microsoft, the security of Windows is zero, because Microsoft has total control over the computer. And after all, nobody puts more malware into a Windows system than Microsoft. But please don't think that Microsoft is uniquely evil and only Microsoft would do this, because Apple has done the same thing. I don't know of spy features in macOS, but we know that macOS 10 is full of digital restrictions management, and it has a back door just like the one in Windows. Apple can forcibly change anything in the software at any time. In other words, these systems demand blind faith from the user. There is no possible basis for rational trust. Blind faith or nothing. And these all-purpose total control backdoors are also found in many cell phones. In fact, I think this we now see is the natural endpoint of proprietary software. You see, proprietary software means the developer has power over the users. When somebody greedy has power over you, he tends to use that power to grab more power again and again until he has total power. And that's what all those companies have done. With these all-purpose total control backdoors, they have given themselves total power over the user's computers. Now, I'm not going to claim that all proprietary software developers introduced malicious features. I suppose, some do and some don't. So the problem is you can never be sure when the program doesn't give you freedom number one, you can never be sure it doesn't have malicious features. There's no way to check. So we can divide these programs into the ones where we know of malicious features and the ones where we don't. Well, some of these programs have malicious features we don't know about, and others don't. But we can't tell which is which. We can't identify the ones without malicious features, because the lack of source code, the lack of freedom number one, means we can't check in any fashion. But even though we can't identify the ones that have no malicious features, we can say something about all of them. And that is, their developers are human, so they make mistakes. The code of these programs has bugs, and the user of a program without freedom one is just as helpless facing an accidental bug as facing a deliberate malicious feature. If you use a program without freedom one, you are a prisoner of the program you use. We free software developers are human too, so we also make mistakes, and the code of our free programs has bugs too. But if you find a bug in our free software or anything in the code that you don't like, you are free to change it, because we did not make you a prisoner. We can't be perfect. We can respect your freedom. So freedom one is also essential. But it's not enough, because that's the freedom to personally study and change the source code. Now that freedom is not enough, because there are millions of users that don't know how to program, who don't have the skills to exercise this freedom. But even for programmers like me, freedom one is not enough, because there's just so much software in the world. In fact, there's so much free software in the world today that nobody is capable of personally studying and mastering the source code of all the programs she uses and then personally implementing all the changes she's likely to want, because that's beyond any